Good day. Greetings to everyone, the mayor, and all of those who are here as either Rotarians or members of the family of Rotary. Now, someone asked earlier this evening about the difference in my accent and Mark's accent. Well, Alabama is my home state, and we live in my hometown. Mark is originally from Southern Illinois, from the Midwest, plus his mother was an English teacher who grew up in Canada. So, like many of you, we have a diverse background, even just between the two of us. Now, 42 years ago, this September, I decided in law school at Vanderbilt University in Nashville that I wanted to take a class in international law because my goal was to live far away from my home city in Alabama. And how many of you as young people thought that's what you would do as well, and then you ended up right there where you thought you were to be? In fact, our house overlooks the park across the park is the high school that I attended. But when I took that class in international law, I still had in mind that I would become a big city lawyer. And that maybe through that class in international law, I would have the opportunity to see the world. Before my dad took Mark on a drive, and we ended up back in my hometown practicing law with my father, living across the park from my high school. I thought, what happened? But my father knew best. And he knew that we would thrive in our smaller city of 56,000 and that perhaps we would have opportunities that we didn't know we would have. And by, through Rotary, over the many years, we have and we are having the opportunity to see the world. Now, some of you have asked this evening, when are we going back to the States? Or how long we've been in Australia? Or where did we come from? Well, just to give you an example of how Rotary connects the world, I'll just share with you a little bit about our recent journeys. Beginning August 31st, we went to Guatemala City in Antigua, Guatemala. From there, we went to Brazil, to Sao Paulo, and Brasilia. We were then I was home for a few days in Alabama. Mark went to the Rotary headquarters and came back. And then we started on this trip. We started our journey going from Alabama to Houston, from Houston to Auckland to Christchurch, where we were at the Zone Institute for a few days. Our first time in New Zealand. And then I learned a new term, that then we flew across the ditch. And we came to Sydney, and we were in Sydney for, I'm not sure, 24 hours? Not long. 2 nights. 2 nights. And then we came from Sydney, we flew to Melbourne and drove from there to here. Today. And so we arrived this afternoon about 2:30. Tomorrow morning, we drive back to Melbourne. We're speaking at the Rotary Club of Melbourne, the first half of their meeting. They're reversing the speaking order for us. And then we're flying, and I made Mark have to, Mark is our transportation man. He knows everywhere we're flying. I'm only on a need-to-know basis. It works just fine with me. So we're flying from Melbourne to Singapore, from Singapore to Copenhagen, from Copenhagen to Gdansk, Poland. Why not go to Poland when you're in Australia? And this is actually about my 7th trip to Australia and about Mark's 9th. And although it was our first trip to New Zealand. From Gdansk, Poland, we're going to Chicago to the Rotary headquarters in Evanston for 2 days. Then we're going to Buenos Aires, Argentina. Why not? And then from Argentina, we go home to Alabama for about 2 days. And then we're going to Italy. And in October, we have a little bit of a break. And if I started telling you about November and December, I'd use up all of Mark's time. But one of the wonderful things about traveling the world with Rotary and about seeing the world in the unique position that we find ourselves in is that we just keep meeting such wonderful people. People like you who are doing wonderful things both locally and globally. We appreciate our very warm welcome here this evening, and we greatly appreciate the hand of friendship that you have offered to us. Thank you very much.
Good day. Good day. It is great to be here in Ballarat. You know, when they put our schedule together, they said every Rotary International president goes to Ballarat. You must go to Ballarat. But somebody told me that's not really true. So anyway, it is great to be here with Governor Roseanne and her chauffeur, the Honorable Peter Walsh. It's not every day that I get chauffeured around by a member of the Legislative Assembly, party leader. But it's just one of those things you get to do when you're president of Rotary International. It's great to be here with Mayor Samantha and her husband, Greg. Greg, thank you for being here this evening. With Governor Shea and Governor Bryan. I'm glad they're wearing their name tags so I can see them. Actually, I remembered that. I studied them carefully when I was sitting across the table. It's great to be here with Jessie Harmon. And her tiny husband, Andrew. Who's working very hard to get me to root for the Richmond Tigers. I am not putting it on. Jessie Harmon is a vital part of our Rotary International team. She is, as you know, I'm sure you know this, the chair of Rotary International's membership committee. Yes. And we are at a time in our history where we must focus on growing Rotary. And Jessie is leading the charge for us in her second term as the chair of that committee. But Jessie also has another job. Even though there's an upcoming convention in her state, she's not at all focused on the convention in Melbourne because she's a member of the convention committee for Honolulu. Aloha! Oh, we can come on. Aloha! Aloha! Very good. join us in Honolulu on June 6 to 10, 2020 for the 111th Rotary International Convention. Now, as Jesse mentioned, I was the chair of the convention committee for the 2014 International Convention in Sydney. And my introduction to that role happened in January 2012 when past Rotary International Treasurer and Sydney Host Organizing Committee Chair Barry Thompson met with incoming President Ron Burton and myself in San Diego at the International Assembly and informed us that the venue that was in the bid, the Darling Harbour Convention Center, was to be torn down prior to 2014. And that at this point we did not have any facility in which to conduct the convention. But we made a visit to Sydney in April of that year. And first they told us about how they were going to convert the Sydney cricket ground and have a marquee and some quadrant of it to be the plenary hall. And they didn't have the foggiest idea of how they were going to make that happen. They just said it. And the next day they showed us Sydney Olympic Park. And of course the main disadvantage of Sydney Olympic Park is that it's 12 miles away from all the hotels. But you know, the M word, Melbourne, has a lot of power when you're trying to have a convention in Sydney. Well, Premier, if we're going to go out to Sydney Olympic Park, we've got to have transport for all those people. You can give them free transportation on the trains, can you not? And the buses and the ferries. Oh, yes, we can do that. You know, we'd hate to have to go to Melbourne. And, you can, and why should we take all those other trains? I mean, you can give us a dedicated train service between Sydney Central and Sydney Olympic Park, can't you? Oh, sure, yes, we can do that. And you can give all of the registrants for the convention free transport on all government-operated buses, trains, and ferries for 3 days before, through the convention, and 1 day afterwards, can't you? Why, yes, we can do that. And so we had a splendid convention in Sydney with wonderful transportation. As a convention chair and a convention planner, it is your hope that as the registrants, as the attendees leave the convention, they remember nothing about the transportation. Because if they remember nothing, it meant that it worked okay. Usually if they remember something, it's because something went wrong. But in Sydney, everybody remembers the transportation. And they remember it positively. Because the party started as soon as they got on the train at Sydney Central and continued for 22 minutes. Not 21 or not 23, but 22 minutes as the train ran out to Sydney Olympic Park. It was a wonderful event. Now, Gay has talked with you some about our travels. And we were across the ditch in Christchurch. Just over the weekend, just a few days ago, at the Rotary Zone Conference. And during the conference, and as the president of Rotary International, Gay and I had the opportunity to experience lots of different cultures. And so during the conference, there was a panel discussion on ego and motivation, and there were two cricket stars on the panel. I haven't a clue who they were. One was male and retired, one was female and not retired, and that's all I can tell you. I listened to their presentation. I understood every word that they said, but I haven't a clue of what any of it meant. 1 for 226. It doesn't sound very good to me. You know, 1 out of 2 seems better than 1 out of 220. Anyway. And of course, so our only personal experience with an Australian athletic event is that we did, right before the Sydney Convention, go to an Australian rules football game between the Sydney Swans and the Geelong Cats.
Go the Tigers.
And we saw, I'm not exactly sure what we saw, but we kind of picked up. It's been 5 years ago now, but we kind of picked up on what happened. And then, but what really stuck with us is after a team scored, this fella came running out behind these 4 posts. 3 posts and 2 shorter posts. I think that's right, isn't it? He comes running out with 2 flags and starts making signals like he's trying to bring in a 747. And I think he was just trying to tell us that there'd been a score, but I'd seen that there'd been a score, and I wasn't exactly sure what this was all about. But that's just one of our cultural experiences. Another cultural experience occurred at the beginning of the conference in Christchurch. Gay and I, I'm the president of Rotary International, so we're among the dignitaries. And so at the opening session on Friday relationships, this Rotary year, we will connect Rotary to the world through the ties we have and the goals we share with the United Nations. There are so many parallels between the work we already do through our areas of focus and the work of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. While those goals are indeed incredibly ambitious, they are like any other ambitious goal we have ever undertaken, in Rotary or anywhere else. Rotary was there at the beginning of the United Nations. We were there when the world pulled itself from the brink of destruction and rebuilt. Over the next year, the UN will mark the 75th anniversary of the signing of the UN Charter. And to celebrate our enduring relationship with the UN, Rotary is hosting 5 special events. UN Day in New York in November, 3 presidential conferences in Santiago, Paris, and Rome, and a final celebration just before the convention in Honolulu. This relationship with the United Nations is but one example of how together we can serve the world. Alone, we cannot provide clean water for all. Alone, we cannot eliminate hunger. Alone, we cannot eradicate polio. But together, of course we can. We have a proud legacy upon which to build. This year, we will further that legacy as Rotary connects the world. These connections that I've talked about this evening are not the work of a self-driving organization on autopilot, or even of the great Rotarians that came before us. The connections are yours. The service is yours. And Rotary's impact on the world is up to you. You will have a lasting impact on the world, but you will not do it alone. While we may approach things differently, together we are so powerful. We represent an organization of 1.2 million inspired women and men who have come to Rotary with the goal of building a better world. Building a better world might seem like a daunting task until you understand the power of connection. Because it is the power of connection that will allow all of us to do the tasks we have set out to do. We are Rotarians, Rotaractors, and supportive members of the family of Rotary. And we are going to harness the power of connection, just as our organization has been doing now for over 114 years. We have a long, proud heritage, and we will thrive for another 114 years because we are not afraid of change. Together, we will walk the path of this important journey as Rotary connects the world.